What if I told you China just built an engine that doesn't need a battery, refuels in 5 minutes, and still leaves a Tesla looking outdated on a cold morning? Sounds impossible, except it's already rolling out of factories right now and the entire EV industry is quietly freaking out. Here's exactly what this engine is, how it works, and why Tesla just got humiliated. The pollution trap that forced China's hand. Rewind to the early 2000s and China was choking. Literally. Cities like Beijing wore a permanent gray hood, hospital admissions for lung disease were climbing, and the country was importing more crude oil than it knew how to safely store. Energy security was hanging by a thread, and every barrel that arrived by tanker was another reminder that the economy was running on borrowed breath. Beijing had a choice. Chase the West down the same gasoline rabbit hole or jump the rails entirely. They jumped. But here's the part most people miss. They didn't only bet on lithium batteries. Quietly, in parallel, China started funding alternative powertrains that the rest of the world dismissed as too weird, too expensive, or too far away. Hydrogen combustion, ammonia engines, methanol fuel systems, the kind of tech most Western boardrooms laughed off. 2 decades later, nobody's laughing anymore. That early gamble is exactly why a Chinese engine without a battery is now embarrassing the most valuable EV brand on earth. Meet the engine that skips the battery entirely. So what exactly is this engine that's making headlines? It's a hydrogen internal combustion engine. And yes, you read that right. Not a fuel cell, not a battery. An actual piston engine that burns hydrogen the way a normal motor burns gasoline. The exhaust? Mostly water vapor. The refuel time? Under 5 minutes. The cold weather performance? Untouched because there's no battery to freeze and degrade. Chinese manufacturers have pushed thermal efficiency past 46% on prototype units, which is genuinely staggering when you remember most gas engines top out around 35. It uses familiar parts the auto industry already knows how to mass produce: pistons, crankshafts, injectors, but it swaps the fuel for something that leaves no carbon behind. That means existing factories can retool without scrapping $1 billion of machinery. Tesla can't say that. The whole pitch of the EV revolution was that gasoline was dead. Turns out the engine itself wasn't the problem. The fuel was. And China just figured out how to feed the old machine something cleaner. Why Tesla suddenly looks slow? Here's where the comparison gets brutal. A Tesla Model Y on a road trip needs to stop, plug in, and wait. In freezing temperatures, range can drop by 30%. The supercharger network is impressive, but it's still a network. And outside major corridors, drivers play a guessing game. Now imagine a sedan running this Chinese hydrogen engine. You roll into a station, fill up in 3 or 4 minutes, and drive 700 kilometers regardless of whether it's -20 outside or blistering summer heat. No battery degradation over time, no expensive replacement pack at the 8-year mark. No anxiety scrolling through a charging app looking for a working stall. For long-haul truckers, taxi fleets, and rural drivers, that's not a small upgrade. That's a complete game changer. Tesla's moat was always supposed to be its battery and software lead. But what happens when the competition stops trying to win the battery race and just deletes the battery from the equation? You don't compete on a track that no longer exists. The methanol wildcard nobody saw coming. But hydrogen isn't the only trick in China's hand. Geely and a handful of smaller players have gone deep on methanol-powered engines, and the logic is almost too clean. Methanol is a liquid at room temperature, which means it ships in regular tanker trucks, stores in regular fuel tanks, and pumps out of regular gas station nozzles. No cryogenic infrastructure, no high-pressure storage, no multi-billion-dollar overhaul of the fuel network. You can produce it from biomass, from captured carbon dioxide, even from waste streams, and when it burns in a properly tuned engine, the emissions are dramatically cleaner than gasoline. Geely already has thousands of methanol taxis operating in cities like Guiyang, racking up millions of kilometers of real-world data. This isn't theory. This is taxi drivers picking up fares right now in vehicles Western media barely covers. While Tesla pours capital into gigafactories, Chinese engineers are quietly proving that the cheapest path to clean transport might just be a slightly modified piston engine running on a different liquid. Ammonia, the fuel from thin air. Now strap in, because this next one sounds like science fiction. Chinese researchers have been pushing ammonia combustion engines into serious development, and the implications are wild. Ammonia is made of nitrogen and hydrogen, and nitrogen makes up almost 80% of the air we breathe. That means the raw ingredient is, quite literally, everywhere. Burn it correctly and the emissions contain zero carbon. None. Compare that to a battery EV, where the carbon footprint is hidden upstream in mining, refining, and grid electricity that often comes from coal. An ammonia engine sidesteps all of that. The catch has always been combustion stability. Ammonia is harder to ignite cleanly than gasoline. But Chinese engineers have been chipping away at that problem with new injection systems and ignition strategies, and the early test results are turning heads in research papers across Europe and Japan. If they crack the durability and efficiency curve, the entire conversation about clean transport gets rewritten. Tesla can't fight a fuel that pulls from the atmosphere itself. The real reason Western automakers are panicking. Here's the uncomfortable truth nobody in Detroit wants to say out loud. Western automakers spent the last decade ripping out engine factories and replacing them with battery plants. Billions of dollars, massive layoffs, entire engineering teams retrained. They burned the bridge back to combustion. China didn't. Chinese manufacturers kept their engine expertise alive even while leading the EV charge, running parallel tracks instead of betting it all on one bet. Now that battery-free clean engines are looking viable, China can pivot in 18 months. Ford, GM, Volkswagen, they'd need 3 to 5 years just to spin up the tooling again. And by then, Chinese versions will already be on the road in Europe, Latin America, and Southeast Asia at price points the West can't match. Toyota saw this coming, which is why they kept hydrogen alive when everyone mocked them. But even Toyota didn't have the manufacturing scale of China. This is the moment where 2 decades of strategic patience pays off. While Tesla was busy being the future, China was busy owning every possible future at once. The hidden costs of the all-battery bet. Let's pull back the curtain on something the EV industry doesn't love discussing. Going fully battery electric for every car on the planet was always a massive ask. Lithium reserves are concentrated in just a handful of countries. Cobalt mining still has serious human rights concerns. The electrical grid in most nations isn't ready to handle hundreds of millions of cars charging simultaneously. And recycling spent batteries at scale is still a half-solved problem. Every one of those bottlenecks gets eased or eliminated when you have alternative powertrains in the mix. A hydrogen engine doesn't need a giant battery pack. A methanol engine doesn't strain the grid at all. An ammonia engine sidesteps lithium entirely. China's approach isn't to replace EVs, it's to add tools to the toolbox so the energy transition actually scales. Tesla's strategy is one tool, used everywhere. China's strategy is the full workshop. And when raw material prices spike or grid capacity hits a wall, having options stops being a luxury and starts being survival. What this means for drivers like you. So what does all this actually mean if you're sitting at home wondering whether your next car should be electric? Honestly, it means the calculation just got more interesting. For the next few years, battery EVs will still dominate showrooms in North America and Europe. But the moment a Chinese-made hydrogen sedan or methanol crossover lands at a Western dealership at $20,000 with 5-minute refuels, the consumer math shifts overnight. Tariffs and trade barriers can slow that down, but they can't stop it forever. Buyers in price-sensitive markets, Brazil, Indonesia, parts of Eastern Europe, will get there first. And when they do, the global narrative around what a clean car looks like is going to shift dramatically. Tesla won't disappear. But the idea that one technology wins everything? That idea is already dead. The future isn't pure electric or pure combustion. It's plural. It's hydrogen here, methanol there, batteries in cities, ammonia in long-haul trucks. China figured that out a decade before anyone else, and now the rest of the world is scrambling to catch up to a future they thought they were already leading. Thanks for sticking with me to the end. If this breakdown of China's battery-free engine revolution opened your eyes, drop a comment below telling me which fuel you think wins the next decade: hydrogen, methanol, ammonia, or are batteries still king? And don't forget to subscribe so you catch the next deep dive the moment it goes live. Catch you in the next one.